understand that I have asked you to make some pretty big changes in your life potentially. And if we're saying, all right, hey, exercise, we want to add a little more of that, maybe some changes in the diet, maybe focusing even more specifically on trauma, maybe in a very structured approach, it can evoke some pretty strong emotions. You might be feeling more anxious. You might be feeling more distressed in general. And there's a really great coping skill that comes from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And this is one that, we won't necessarily encourage you to use during treatment, but it's great when we're trying to prepare for treatment because it can give us this understanding of what our emotions do. If we think about intense emotional distress, these are the times in which we're feeling very dysregulated. Emotionally, we may have difficulty bringing down the intensity of what we're feeling. If our anger is at a 9 out of 10, 10 being the most intense we can imagine, that's a moment that we don't think all that logically. We're not the most rational. We're not the best versions of ourselves. And there is an evolutionary skill that we can throw in here, and it's called the mammalian dive response. What we're asking you to do, and it may not work in all environments, and I'll explain why in a moment, we're asking you to take ideally a bowl of water, and you dunk your face in the water. You're getting your entire face in there, you're holding your breath, ideally for 30 seconds, and something's going to happen. It's going to give this signal to the brain that you are diving underwater. That's how the brain will interpret it, and it will start to have its own change in terms of your body. Typically, the sympathetic nervous system is preparing us for distress. That fight-flight system, the body's getting us ready to run or flee, and something happens internally. We have all the blood rush to our major muscle groups. It's trying to prepare us for action. Our body's no longer digesting. We aren't thinking as rationally. We're not pondering philosophy. In the same breath, in that moment, we're not thinking rationally. We tend not to communicate well. We don't want you trying to communicate really complex messages in that moment. What's going to happen there? The parasympathetic nervous system, it goes in the other direction. It calms the body down. And that's what we're activating right there. So when there is this moment that you're having that very intense emotional distress, when you feel your face in that very cold water, you don't get there, you're going to feel the intensity of that emotion come down very rapidly. This is one of those over-the-top skills. This may not apply in a work setting. You may not be able to do this when you're in a verbal discussion or a verbal conflict with someone close to you. But I'll encourage you to use this when you're alone. If you're just get off the phone with someone and it's a very distressing conversation, identify that intense emotion and give this a try. Watch what happens as the intensity of that emotion comes down. This skill is basically slowing the heart rate. It's slowing our breathing. We want you holding your breath when you're in the water for 30 seconds. And it's a great supplementary skill. So, if you're someone that has heart issues, certainly consult with your doctor before using a skill like this. But also, we want you to tease through these skills and try to use what works for you. For some individuals, we notice that exercise is one of those skills, one of those self-care habits that can lead to tremendous emotional change, tremendous perceptions of control within life, tremendous changes in the beliefs in terms of mastery. For others, that's not the case. We want you to take what's beneficial and discard what isn't. And I say supplementary in terms of once we start to hop into more of these structured treatments, these skill sets, these smaller skills I'm mentioning, that's the time we want you to have that discussion with your therapist to ensure that we're not doing something that's getting in the way of treatment. For example, in prolonged exposure, when you're in session and you're recounting the event, you're revisiting the trauma, in that moment, we don't want to bring down the distress rapidly. We don't want to bring it down artificially in that manner with the water. We want that to come down naturally. We want you to feel that slow decline of distress in session. So, particular skills may not apply broadly. They may be more in these moments as we're preparing for treatment. It's a great discussion to have with your therapist or with a therapist if you're thinking about making some transition in terms of the treatment that you're working on right now.